My name is Darcy Burner. I'm the Executive Director of ProgressiveCongress.org, a nonprofit that works with the Congressional Progressive Caucus and progressives inside and outside of Congress. We have a terrific panel today to talk about what's actually going on in Afghanistan and what the alternatives are for the American people. We'll do a little bit of background so that you have a sense of what's going on, and then we will in fact open it up for questions and answers in a bit. So why don't we start, I'll introduce the members of our panel. So Matt Duss is the security editor at Think Progress. Retired Major General Paul Eaton is a former commanding general in Iraq and a longtime member of the United States military. Matthew Hoh served in Afghanistan in both the military and with the State Department. And then former Congressman Thomas Andrews is currently running the Win Without War coalition in Washington, D.C. So why don't we start with some basics. I don't know how familiar many of you are with Afghanistan. The odds are, based on some of the conversations I've had, that a few of you have been there. And there are probably also some people in the room who couldn't name any of the adjoining countries, so a wide variety of knowledge, I would guess. Mr. Hoh, if you'd be so kind, could you talk a little bit about the sort of history and geography and economy of Afghanistan, just a tiny bit, so people get a sense of what we're talking about?
Sure. Well, thanks, and it's very nice to be here. Afghanistan is located in Central Asia, between Iran, Pakistan, and Central Asian states. So its location is of somewhat strategic importance to the United States. The terrain there is varied. You have mountains, forests, you have vast deserts. The most important thing to understand about it is the population and the peoples there. It's a very divided population. The population is divided among various ethnic groups. It's divided regionally. It's divided between urban and rural. You see almost like this red state, blue state phenomenon there, class between the progressive and traditional, secular and religious, if you will. And there's also, what I hesitate to say is intertribal, because the tribal system really does not exist any longer in Afghanistan. After 35 years of constant war, it's been decimated. So there's inter-tribal, inter-village, inter-family, inter-clan. And on top of this, you have an incredibly poor country, the poorest that any of us who've been there have ever seen. And we've pumped $50 or $60 billion in development aid into, which has just really exacerbated the situation rather than improving it because of the flood of money. The one thing to take away is the human capacity there, particularly compared to other parts of the world. It's near non-existent. The areas I operated in the rural areas, you have a male literacy of less than 10%, a female literacy of less than 1%. The bigger problem is innumeracy, people who can't count, which you find quite a lot. You find after 9 years of our involvement, the life expectancy is still only 43 or 44 years of age. Men take additional wives, if they can afford to, they take additional wives, not just because of the tradition, but because it's a practical thing to do, because there's a very, very good chance, like a 1 in 4 chance, that your wife is going to die in childbirth. And on top of this, you have a society where 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 children don't make it to their 5th birthdays. So that's kind of like, that gives you somewhat of a background, hopefully, in terms of what, when you talk about nation building, when you talk about doing combat operations or reconstruction, or however you want to describe our activity in Afghanistan, that gives you kind of a little bit of background of what you're dealing with there.
So can you talk a little bit about your experience in Afghanistan? You've been there a couple of times, multiple times. Well, you've been there once. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like and what led to your decision to leave?
Of course. I actually was in Iraq twice and worked on Iraq and Afghanistan issues in Washington, D.C. for Department of State or for the Department of Defense since 2002, basically. I got to Afghanistan in April of last year. I was a political officer for the State Department. My first assignment was Eastern Afghanistan in Jalalabad. We were in an area on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. I came to find that what our narrative for us being there, what our purposes for us being there, was not matching up with the realities I saw on the ground. I came to understand to be a 35-year-old civil war engaged in, that the enemy were fighting, the guys that are our young men were fighting and killing every day and dying as a result, were members of the Taliban, not because of some ideological belief or some ideological cause, but because they were resisting foreign occupation, they were resisting a corrupt and unrepresentative government, and they were continuing on in, again, a 35-year-old civil war. I was moved down to the south where I worked daily with the Afghan governor down there, and again, the same type of things I saw as being true in the east, I saw being true in the south. And it reminded me so much of our involvement in Iraq, particularly 03 to 06 or 07, where we did not. My first position in Iraq, I was with the State Department Reconstruction Governance team, and to give you an example, we were told, you know, it's 04 or 05, the guidance from the embassy was, you will not work with the tribal leaders, you will not work with the tribal sheikhs, you will work through this new central government system that we have in place. Regardless of the fact that Saddam actually worked quite a bit through the tribal leadership there, because that's how he maintained his power and manipulated the population. You will not work through them. You can patronize them, you can condescend to them, you can give them a Quran as a gift, you can go to their meetings, but you will not work through them. And we didn't fix that. We didn't realize the error of that until really late 06 into 07. And so I was also doing the same things in Afghanistan, refusing to realize the reality of the situation we were in, and refusing to do those steps necessary to alleviate those situations, particularly addressing the Taliban as one monolithic terrorist group, when in reality it's a very broad multitude of different local groups that have, many of them have legitimate political grievances that can be addressed, just like we found in the insurgency in Iraq. So after being involved with this for however many years, really since 02, I, as a matter of conscience, said I can no longer take part in this, that this is how my leadership is going to conduct this war. And so I